But how far can you go? Now, this is a tweet. With the latest developments in R&D, how afraid should farmers be of the test tube burger? This is from Dylan Jones. Go on, Jay.
Very quick answer. Not at all. When meat prices continue to go through the roof, at some point consumers will be happy to accept it. It will never replace a steak, it will never replace a chicken, but if it turns up as a protein substitute, they'll embrace it, not least because all the evidence is, if they ever crack it, and they haven't yet, but if they ever crack it, the inputs are much lower than they are for raising livestock, which means we can concentrate on producing absolutely quality livestock for traditional meat and have this other thing going on over there. It will run in tandem. It won't be an either or.
What do you think, William? Because you're a beef farmer.
I think you can't rule out potential in the future, and we don't know how far this could go. We've heard of hydroponics, where you can grow crops without the use of soil, and now we've got this test tube burger. I understand it costs about 200,000 euros, so it might not quite fit into your average McDonald's restaurant, but certainly you can't rule out that one day R&D might become so advanced, developments might become so advanced that we could run the risk of, not needing certain aspects of agriculture, but then at the same time, you've got to balance that with the fact that we are losing land to climate change as well. So perhaps this technology will run side by side with modern farming, with current farming techniques.
But I mean, Jim, what do you think that the point that Jay makes is right, that price in the end is going to change public opinion on various things, maybe on genetically modified crops as well? I mean, the whole mentality will change because the purse matters more than anything.
The purse will always matter, and I was going to make the point on the earlier question. The one sure way of bringing down food prices is to produce more food, and that's what is missing out of the current CAP proposals. Sean is absolutely right on that. Don't forget, we've had artificial meat made from soya for years, but it hasn't exactly...
Have you eaten it?
Yes, it's dreadful.
He had to say that here.
But that proves the point. Actually, people, if they can, will prefer to have the real stuff. But yes, they will be affected by price, and Sean's right that we need to do everything we can to keep food prices down at a realistic, but it has to be at a level at which it can be afforded to be produced. I find it very ironic that for decades, politicians, probably even myself included, have over the years slagged off the CAP for pushing food prices up and paying huge amounts of taxpayers' money out to it, all of which is true. We've now removed production subsidies, and the amount of money in real terms going into the CAP has gone down. Food prices are going up and up, not because of the CAP, but because of world prices. I don't think you can tell farmers that they've got to get their income from the market and then complain when the market puts the price up. And that's why the only way to get prices down is to improve production, and the market will in itself bring the prices down back to an affordable level.
Let's take the next question from David Verney, please.
My question is to the Minister, but to the whole panel as well. Minister, non-compliant eggs, liquid and powder, entering the UK is a real concern to me and to fellow egg producers. These eggs, even in shell, could become from banned cages could reach our consumers. We welcome the stance, and tough action must be taken to ensure eggs produced in conventional battery cages should not be allowed to undermine the investment made by UK farmers, and that the UK consumer should be confident that any product that they buy with egg as an ingredient has been made with compliant eggs. Now that we can finally say that the UK is 100% compliant, is this the time to revisit the action that the government can take to ensure non-compliant eggs do not reach UK consumers?
Thanks for the question. I think there are, 13 countries, I think, that that haven't complied with the EU regulations on these cages.
That was the last
Can you ban them?
No.
You can't?
That's the bottom line. Rest assured, if I could have banned them, I would have done so. But the law is absolutely unequivocal. The Commissioner has put it in writing, and we're publishing that shortly, that it would be illegal for any member state to impose a unilateral ban. I think the whole way it was handled by the Commission during last year, when we could see this picture developing was extremely regrettable, to put it mildly. But we are where we are. We've brought in a whole range of voluntary agreements with the retailers, the food manufacturers, the wholesalers, the catering sector. We've squeezed out the demand for that egg, but all through a series of voluntary agreements. And I'm not aware, and we're monitoring the situation carefully, I'm not aware of any evidence that illegal egg is in any form is coming into this country now.
Mary, do you think that more could have been done?
Well, I think it raises another question, which is about the 2013 ban on sow stalls, because I think the government were caught asleep on the job on the egg front, and it shouldn't rely on the National Farmers Union to publish the list of good eggs in order for consumers to have some awareness about who has got traceability in their systems or not. And I think it's also interesting, I mean, Jim said, you know, in replies to me that the border agency has got scanning techniques to look at where eggs could be illegal. I mean, if we're relying on customs and excise and the border agency to stop the eggs coming in on past performance, we won't be doing a very good job. So I just, my challenge to Jim is what are you going to do about the sow stalls? Because we're good at doing these things. We lead the world in animal welfare in our farming practices. We mustn't force these costs onto our farmers and then allow other countries to have a free ride on it.
Well, that's blatantly self-evident, and we've learnt the lesson by doing it with sow stalls where we banned them in 1999. We've all recognised the impact that has had. It doesn't help us anywhere in terms of actually what we do about it. The issue with eggs, and will be the case with the sow stalls, is traceability. You have got, anything you impose, you've got to be able to enforce for it to be of any meaningful value, and that means that we have got to find ways, and we're working on it already within the department, and as the Commission is now working hard on it as well, how you actually ensure that you can trace pig meat back to the system in which it was produced.
So you're working on that now
we
with
are
suppliers, so that in 2013 we will be guaranteed to have cruelty-free meat come in this country.
We will not be able to ban, as we know now, we will not be able to ban, and unless you're advocating that we break the European law, we will not be able to ban pig meat coming into this country. But what we'll be working on, and we haven't got this all sorted yet, I'm not pretending we have, is how we can develop arrangements, voluntary agreements, whatever, to make sure that nobody wants to bring it in, and that if it is brought in, it is properly identified and labelled as such. But we've got a long way to go. The Commission, which was very slow off the mark over eggs, recognises this. I had a meeting with the Commissioner 3 weeks ago in my office in Defra, and we discussed this, and we're very well aware of the situation. He, at the moment, is trying to establish the current picture in the main pig-producing countries to find out just what it's looking like now, which is in itself an advance on where they were with eggs.
Jake, I mean, you want to come in briefly?
A lot of it is also about, we have to go back to it, the supermarkets. We have at the moment the Take the Pledge Red Tractor campaign run by the body representing pig farmers, and they're getting consumers to sign the pledge to only buy pork with the Red Tractor sign on it. When I suggested to them that could they not also say to the supermarkets that they stop bloody buying the stuff that's coming from outside, they said, oh, well, it's very difficult, you see. It would help if there was consumer pressure, proper consumer pressure, to get the supermarkets to stop bringing in the stuff from Denmark, the Netherlands, where sow stalls are still being used.
That's very true. But we also need to make, there will always be some who want to bring it in for purely price reasons, and that is why food labelling is so critical.
No, absolutely.
And I'm really pleased the way that we have been able to change the situation in the last 2 years so that to get rid of misleading food labelling, and I have to say the previous government talked the good talk, did nothing in Europe. We've achieved this so that now if something says its country of origin is British, it means that's where the meat came from, not where the damn thing was sliced or produced.
Right, let's take the next question from Arthur Hill.
Good afternoon, panel. I'm Arthur Hill from the wonderful county of Shropshire. My question is a legacy from previous cap reforms and entry-level schemes, etc., from an environmental point of view. Over the early 90s, farmers were pilloried for the removal of hedgerows. In fact, between 1984 and 1998, according to the Countryside Survey, 88,000 kilometres of hedgerows disappeared. The farming community, with the help of various schemes, responded dramatically and magnificently to this with large-scale plantings to restore the balance and more. We've now reached a stage where many of these hedges need to be layered to guarantee their future and also add shape and stock proofing to assist bird life and future maintenance. Minister and other members of the panel, do you think that some of Natural England's resources could be better channeled in helping to protect these valuable wildlife corridors by grant aiding the work needed and also training the next generation of hedge layers to carry out this difficult but absolutely vital task? I believe that Natural England would be better focused in helping some of the people who signed up to the schemes in the early years, as well as those that they're focusing on new schemes.
So, Jim.
Well, my understanding is that actually it can be done, Arthur, in terms of certainly within HLS. But I agree entirely with what you're saying, but I'm not sure you're right to assume that it isn't possible. But I'm certainly very happy to take it away and check on that.
Well, I'm an enthusiastic
told it
gardener,
isn't.
and I've planted a native species hedge at the bottom of my absolutely tiny garden in London, and it's blackthorn and hazel and birch and hawthorn, and it's lovely in the spring, but it's a bit of a curse because the blackthorn is now popping up in my lawn, and nobody told me that when I planted it. So if anyone's got any severe agricultural equipment that can leave me some big loppers to deal with my sprouting sloes, I'd be grateful. No, I think it's really important. I think the point you make about wildlife corridors is absolutely vital. I think obviously in the past people weren't aware of their vital role in providing food, not just for birds, but also for certain types of caterpillars and moths. I think there's a particular moth that only feeds on the second year's shoots of a particular type of hedge. And obviously we want that moth to come back into Britain, and it can only do that if the hedges aren't cut every year. So I think it's about fostering a better understanding between farmers who want to do their bit for wildlife and between the sort of insect and bird life community, because actually I think both sectors are often seen as sort of fighting each other, and actually I think both sectors want to see a thriving environmentally rich landscape.
Thank you. Can I ask Angela Sargent, Paul Temple and Andrew Cousins to make their way to a microphone while I ask a Twitter question. So, just a minute. How much more evidence of harm to wildlife and damage to property does Jim Pace need before he takes actions to ban Chinese lanterns? Charles Tassell. So, I mean, other countries have banned them, haven't they, Jim? I think other countries have banned them. A couple of other countries have, I think. So, you know, clearly it's doable.
It of course is doable, and as you say, a couple of other countries have done it. Actually, the answer is in the question. The evidence we've got is all anecdotal. I fully recognise, you know, as somebody said earlier, I keep cattle myself. I know what damage a wire can do to a cow if it gets in its stomach. But we're not actually getting the evidence. I need to persuade my colleagues in government, it's not a unilateral decision, to persuade my colleagues in government that we need to ban these. I need actual, clear evidence of incidences of cattle ingestion, of fire. We've had, incidentally, 1 or 2 cases of Coast Guards being called out for them. But we need that clear evidence. We need to know if a vet does a post-mortem and finds an animal has got a wire in it that's come from a Chinese lantern. We need to know, and it's only by stacking up the evidence that I can argue the case with my
William,
colleagues.
do you have any evidence of this?
Coast Guard pulled out. That is evidence. If you've got a helicopter out for...
It's one case. You can't ban something on one case.
Well, it depends how much it costs to get a helicopter up in the sea and put people's lives at risk for something that actually turns out to be false. I mean, I think there's issues. There are these lanterns available that are completely biodegradable, and I think there's got to be a way of sorting this out, because it's a problem that's been going on. I mean, it's relatively new, but it's a relatively new phenomenon. But I don't think we should sit and wait. I think you should actively go out and look for evidence, look for the examples. But once the Coast Guard's been called out on a false promise, I think then you have got a problem.
William, what have you seen or heard?
No personal experience with Chinese lanterns myself, but...
there aren't many in Pembrokeshire.
well, they blow away if they come near the place. But, I would like to think, though, that Jim would, act upon evidence should he receive it, and only urge then the agricultural community to try and gather that evidence. But it does show a lack of understanding on parts of people who do partake in this, because I think it's media-wide quite considerably now as to the effects of Chinese lanterns. So why, and as Jay says, they're quite informed now in urban areas, why then aren't they listening to this advice and trying to save livestock which is being affected, and also barns which might catch fire?
We do need to just pick up Mary's point. I'm not criticising her, but this issue about biodegradable ones is a bit of a red herring, because of course sharp bamboo is just as dangerous as wire.
Okay, next question from Angela Sargent, please.
Hello. I'd just like to make one comment to back up Arthur Hill. We're coming to the end of a 10-year countryside stewardship plan, and we've replaced a lot of our hedges, and we can't get in HLS because they've got no money. But my question today is, we've debated the political, business and production challenges over the last 36 hours in that order. Shouldn't the production challenge come first and the political challenge come well down the list of priorities? In fact, might it be better if it was taken out of the equation altogether?
What do you think, Sean?
Well, I really think you're wishing for the moon, aren't you? You're in an industry which absorbs vast amounts of public money at a time when people are struggling to control public expenditure. All we seem to hear are the problems that occur because this public money is leading to more and more regulations and more interference. I'll tell you what you should do. If you want the politics out of it, you stand up first and say, we're an industry, we're fed up with holding a hand out for money. We'd like to stand on our own feet, and we would like to see the CAP pulled down. I have more confidence in farmers than most people in this room, it strikes me. Good farmers look after their countryside. Good farmers are proud of what they do. Good farmers are prepared to stand up and be counted. Keep asking everyone to pay for everything you do. You lose public sympathy. Outside this room, you lose it.
What do you think, Mary, about that? I mean, are they losing public sympathy with...
Well, I'm very reluctant to take politics out of anything, but I would say that, wouldn't I? I'm an MP. I think farmers have a difficult job to do. And we've talked about prices and production, and we've talked about the role that CAP played. But there is another thing that's coming up and creeping up on the farm industry, and that is the increase in commodity prices and the increase in the commodities market. The amount of money that was invested in the commodities market 10 years ago was $300 million. That amount today has gone up 1,000 times. And I don't think that the market for commodities has gone up 1,000 times. What we've seen is financial institutions having introduced systemic risk into housing and created a bubble there, have moved on, parked that one. We all know what happened when the housing bubble crashed, because we're all still paying the price for that in all sorts of ways, and are now moving into commodity prices. For commodities, whether they're wheat, soy, copper, metal, that they never actually receive. They've just become another financial product. And I think the farming community needs to be very careful about this. We've already seen the collapse of one commodities trader, and farmers in the US are losing out money that they'd invested, that they thought was kept separately. And I think that the farming community needs to be very, very cautious about what's happening with prices.